Good morning. Good morning. I'm sharing the slides in our chat right now, and then we will get started on today's presentation. Welcome, everybody. So glad to see everybody today. So it's important to remember that Family Matters has developed this presentation under a grant from the U.S. Department of Education. However, the contents of today's presentation don't necessarily represent the policies of the U.S. Department of Education and should not be considered endorsement from the federal government. Family Matters PTIC is not a legal agency. We don't provide legal advice or representation in any way. Family Matters is not intended to serve you as a legal resource. So please keep that in mind when I share content with you today. What is a parent center? So Family Matters PTIC serves the state of Illinois as its parent training and information center. Every state has to have at least one PTI, and they are federally funded organizations that provide free support, training, and information to families of children with disabilities. These centers are authorized under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act to help parents, caregivers, family members, school support staff, and students or self-advocates to understand and navigate the special education system. PTIC serves families of children all the way from birth to 26 years old and offer assistance in a variety of formats, including workshops and training like the one you're attending today. We also provide one-to-one consultation services and online resources. Please remember the webinar is being recorded today and will be available following the presentation on the Family Matters website and YouTube page. Please use the chat box to state your name and title in your organization. So for myself, I would say I'm Abby Mars, a parent, or I might say I'm Abby Mars, Family Matters PTIC. We will be utilizing the Q&A box for questions. Please try to put all your questions in the Q&A box. It's easier to find at the end of the presentation. At that time, we will stop the recording and take your questions. Also, please help us by completing that brief survey you'll receive after the presentation, or you'll receive the QR code today during the presentation. A copy of the presentation slides is available in the chat, as well as it will be emailed to you after today's presentation. Thanks to everybody for introducing themselves in the chat. Appreciate it. My name is Abby Mars, and I'm an educational support coach here at Family Matters PTIC. I'm also a Charting the LifeCourse facilitator, which means I have been trained in understanding the person-centered approach to the Charting the LifeCourse framework. Charting the LifeCourse is a program designed by the University of Kansas City, Missouri, and Family Matters has chosen to integrate all of that framework into the support we offer families and self-advocates. Today's webinar is titled Back to School Success for Students with Disabilities. So I'm going to share some information with you and some tips on how to make sure the success is happening as we go into school. I know a lot of schools in Central Illinois are starting today and tomorrow. My nieces are in Indiana. They started today. So this is just some tips from other good resources to think and keep in mind as your student may start back to school. Whether they're starting brand new in preschool or kindergarten, or they're returning for their 7th grade year, these tips can be universal for all of our students with disabilities to get back on track with learning. So some of our training objectives today are going to be understand challenges students with disabilities face after the summer break, learn tools and supports including IEPs, 504 plans, RTI, and ESY. Some of those acronyms are familiar to you. Sometimes they're not. I will explain them in more depth as we approach those. We're going to talk about exploring strategies to reestablish routines, utilizing the Charting the LifeCourse One-Pager for advocacy, and access helpful tools and resources. So summer is over. As a parent I've got one student left in public school. He's a junior, starting his junior year tomorrow. I'm glad summer's over. Summer's always a challenging time for students with disabilities. They have a loss of routine during the summer. And we might also see some regression in their academic or functional skills. Their anxieties may even increase over the summer, and they may really, really strive to get some more social, emotional support. So it's important to remember these things about our students. Every student, when they return, may go through some of these stages. Every student may struggle to adapt to the summer routine because they're losing their regular support and routine. However, for our students with disabilities, it's important that we get ahead of this problem, not behind it, and start off strong. So that summer gap can create these setbacks, especially in our students. So identifying these early are very critical. Let's talk about recognizing some signs of a regression. So I have always, I think that summer sometimes has a honeymoon period. So the first couple weeks, they're going great. You guys are going to the library, going to the pool, they're going to the sitter, the daycare center. I had to stay at home with my oldest son. He had higher support needs and daycare wasn't an option. So the first couple weeks would go rather smoothly, but he's very much a creature of routine. So he started to struggle right after that 2-week mark. So some signs of regression we want to make sure we're paying attention to as they re-enter the school is observing and documenting any signs that they've lost skills from the previous spring. So if your kindergartner was working on their ABCs and can get all the way to L, and you're noticing now repeatedly they only get past D, okay, this is a regression. We're forgetting some things. There might even be changes in behavior or mood. These are typical, especially, having to get back into that regular routine, but definitely notice if it continues to be a problem. They also might have some increased resilience on adult support. So they might be really pushing it away. Observe and document these regressions. It can help determine if there might be a need for extra support over the summer in the future. That extra support could be extended school year services. So extended school year services are part of your child's IEP. You should be discussing the need for ESY or extended school year services at every IEP meeting. We establish the need for ESY when we see regression or a hard time getting restarted after an extended break. So typically we monitor this all school year long, but we really look at it after they return from that winter break. That winter break's a long, usually 2-week break. They come back from winter break and we really pay attention to those progress notes that come with the IEP to see if your student may have regressed or struggled to get back on track with learning after that break. If that's the case, then we definitely need to call a meeting and talk about ESY services. But sometimes they don't show a lack of regression in that 2-week break. But when they come back to school the next fall, we definitely see that. So we want to make sure we're documenting that so we can call a meeting to talk about ESY. We have a presentation on understanding extended school year services. We did it last spring. You're welcome to access that on our YouTube channel. But briefly, extended school year services are an extension of a typical school year for a student with an IEP. We have found that they show regression or they show a lack to retain or move forward with their skills upon reentry to school. And so we talk about ways to serve this student in an extended break like summer. It is different from summer school. It is not the same thing as summer school. It is different for every student depending on their skill level and how they regress skills. So an example might be your son was receiving speech services and he was really making good progress on his goals until that winter break. And when he came back, he regressed. So we identified he needed speech support over the summer. So not his full IEP looking at working on over summer, just particularly that area is what he was going to work on. And we monitor that and we increase the support so that he gets that over the summer. So when he comes back, there's not a lack in skill. There's not a regression there. So again, this is talked about at every IEP meeting if your student needs it. Every school district has to provide ESY for students if they need it. That's the big if there. If the IEP team determines it's needed, they have to provide it. Even if it means sending your student to the local hospital for therapy or sending your student to a neighboring district to get it, they have to provide it if you show a need. So that's just kind of briefly what it's about. If you'd like to know more in depth about it, you can definitely access the citation here, the resources afterwards, or we do have that recording of the presentation. Okay, reestablishing this routine. This may be a little late for some of us, but I personally, as a parent, like to start the bedtime and wake up schedules 2 to 3 weeks before school comes back in session, because you get out of that routine during the summer. So getting back on that routine is better if you've done it for a few nights before school first starts. Practice the morning and after school routines too. We also have a series on our YouTube page from last summer about establishing healthy family routines in the morning, after school, and actually I think it's 2 summers ago, in the morning, after school, and at bedtime. So go check those out. There's just some suggestions in there about establishing those routines. Visual schedules and social stories can be key for our students as well. So if you want more information on how to make visual schedules, there's lots out there. We can share resources with a follow-up email as well. Visual schedules really help our kids get back on track. Social and emotional readiness. Talk with your students. role play classroom and playground experiences. Reconnect with their peers, even if it's virtually over a virtual chat or maybe a play date. And a lot of these teachers, guys, are even open to, hey, school starts next week. Could we Zoom you at one of your prep times so that Johnny gets familiar with your face again? This is a great thing to do. Prepare for sensory experiences like a noisy lunchroom. I actually would take my son to the school during football practice when everybody was like in the lunchroom, like at football camp, so he could get the noise. So prepare for those things. And preparing for these things not only prepares your student, but it lets you as a parent observe some of the challenges they may have in those areas. Okay. So a noisy hallway is kind of hard to replicate during summer, but talk to your school staff about how you could replicate that scenario so you can observe, so you can see how your student might hit some barriers in that environment. I also like to go to the playground for a few play dates that week. I like to leave home and do the bus route. We live rurally, so we like to do the bus route. Lots of those. We also would practice packing our lunch and practice opening our lunch so that I made sure my son could like open his milk or open like a juice package if we sent it. So these are great things to get started. I also was really big into, and my son has higher support needs, but we made this work. We went to the store and he picked out his own school supplies, and I would watch him practice opening the Trapper Keeper or practice opening the lunchbox. So I made sure these were a good fit for him, and then he had control over that he was coming up. The first month of school is the perfect time to review the IEP. Read through it again. Check their goals, check their services. Reach out and say, hi, team. Miss Miller did Johnny's speech services last year. Will Miss Miller be doing it this year? And if so, what should we start off with this year? It's a great time just to have that little email with your school district, remembering that some teachers don't come back until the week before, so keep that in mind. Confirm accommodations and modifications. If you have questions about like maybe your kiddo's changing from this school to the next or this teacher to the next, what is that accommodation going to look like in the schoolroom now? Share concerns with that case manager before school even starts if you have any. Like, Mikey's always wore headphones in the classroom because he's overstimulated, but I know the high school has that no headphone policy now. So talk to them about the concerns so we get that taken care of so that transition into is smooth for Mikey. It also goes for 504 plans. Okay, so our 504 plans are for students that are not identified as needing specialized instruction, but do need some accommodations because of the disability that they have. So confirm the supports for their medical or mental health needs are in place. Verify the accessibility for classes and extracurriculars and collaborate with the 504 coordinator if you need to. So again, like Mikey needed those headphones, but there's that rule about headphones. Or a lot of schools across Illinois are going absolutely no cell phone policies. If Mikey used his cell phone for talks to text, we need to figure out how we're going to make this work. So this is a perfect time. Most schools, when you enroll your kiddos, whether you're doing the registration online or in person, are going to provide you with their handbook. If they don't provide you with their handbook, that's accessible online. Download that handbook, read through it, see what the rules are that will apply to Mikey's grade, and compare it to his accommodations to make sure that there aren't going to be any snags. Handbooks are big. You can utilize some AI for that, like maybe run it through the handbook itself through ChatGPT and tell it to pinpoint the things that Mikey's going to need to know upon entering high school. RTI and tiered supports. I think it's next month. We're actually doing a presentation on understanding RTI, but a little bit about RTI. It's used as a way to monitor students that have not been identified under IDEA yet. Okay, so every school has a system, an MTSS support system in which they administer curriculum. And if a student struggles with the administration of that curriculum, they're kind of move up the tier of support. Okay, so as we move up the tier, we start to provide interventions. It might be reading smaller groups of text at a time. It might be the teacher coming over there and talking to them again about what they found. It might be extra time with spelling, like students get it twice, but your student gets it 4 times. So they get what the classroom's working on, and same curriculum, but we gather data from this RTI and we review that data to make sure the supports we are offering are enough for your kiddo to come back to peer level. All right. If they're not enough, we move up the tier, and finally that might spark a referral for special education. So know that that is there if your student is struggling, remembering that the first couple weeks of school, a lot of students are struggling to get adapted to the routine and to learn along with their peers. So RTI could be a thing. Make sure you watch our presentation next month about understanding RTI and tiered supports in Illinois. But it's there to ensure that progress is shared with families. So you will be getting reports about RTI. So the school might email you and say, I really see that Johnny's struggling in math. We want to try some RTI. RTI is sometimes called title services or resource rooms as well. So if you know that your student was taking advantage of that RTI support last year, make sure that's going to continue this year. Or if you start to see that he's struggling, ask if that would be an option right now. We'll talk more about that next month. Okay, my favorite thing ever, charting the life course. Charting the life course, again, is that framework that we use for any person in the world who has a goal they want to get to, and they want to see the trajectory of how to get to that goal. One portion of the framework is the one-pager document. The one-pager document is a great way to share information about your student with a group of people. Okay, so this one-pager document, it's a template. You can download it from our website. Carrie or I could help you to create a one-pager for your student. It will be shared with you as a resource after and an example. So the one-pager document is going to have a picture of your student. It's going to have a beautiful picture. Picture me, Abby, over here in the corner. And it's going to talk about their strengths and what they like to do. It's going to talk about the goals they have to work on this year. It's going to talk about what supports help them and what supports don't help them. And it's going to have more information about the student at the bottom. I love to include these one-pagers into IEPs. A lot of districts that I work with see these and grab onto them like nobody's business. They grab right onto them. It's great to put at the front of the IEP. It's great to have on the teacher's desk laminated too, because if a sub comes in, they know everything about your student they need to know that's crucial for that day. IEPs are long documents. Sometimes teachers don't understand how to read completely through an IEP unless they know this portion is about them, like pertains to spelling or something. So this is a great way. So for example, my son's one-pager, he's an adult with a disability that lives in a SILA or a community home in our community. And the one-pager says things like, my name's David. I struggle with my seizures. I really like to eat carbs, but if I eat too many, it could spark a seizure. Instead, I really love fresh vegetables with ranch dip. Like this child would do anything for ranch, okay? So it's things like that. Or I really do well when you tell me what happens first and then tell me what we're gonna do. I don't do well when you tell me no and point your finger at me. Okay, so these one-pager documents are great for any student, whether they have a disability or not, but especially for our kiddos that have IEPs or 504 plans. So for more information about how to create your one-pager and share it with your school staff, you can access that information on our website. We will be sending you that template after today's presentation, and I think Carrie might even be able to share the link in the chat. Oops, forgot to change the slide. I'm sorry. So that email, that pre-email before school starts, we've talked a lot about that. Include that one-pager in that email to the school team, all right? When I email my kiddo's school team, when I first start, whether it's my child or an educational surrogate student that I have on my caseload, I will email before school starts and say, hey, it's Abby, I'm Johnny's mom. I wanted to show you his one-pager for this year and talk about how this accommodation is going to happen. Talk about any updates we had over the summer. Maybe I say, Johnny fell and broke his arm in August or whatever. I share this information, or maybe Johnny's taking a new medication for his seizures, or Johnny really developed a love for Mega Blocks this summer. Like I share this information. I share good things about my kiddo, and I share some concerns about my kiddo too. I schedule a check-in during the first month, like, hey, could we meet on August 25th just to talk about how the first 2 weeks of school have went? Not necessarily an IEP meeting, but a check-in meeting to make sure that everybody on Johnny's team knows I'm here and I want to work collaboratively with them, and to make sure that I'm hearing their concerns and they are hearing my concerns. This is a great way to get reaccustomed with your child's school team. If you have any trouble locating your team's email addresses, those are usually available on your school's website. If not, you can just directly email your principal or the special education coordinator and ask them to create a group email so that you can have contact with everybody. School apps are big right now, like whether you use Dojo or Remind or something like that. Our school district got their own app this year, very fancy. So that's a possible way you can do that as well. Talk about preparing our student. Practice those school routines, visit the school in the classroom as possible. I even used to visit the bus barn. They were very open of that, just to drop by the bus barn so my kiddo could see the bus, hear the noise, know where he's going to set. Talk through the expectations and concerns. So I would say, D, make sure that you understand that in 1 week we have to start getting on the bus at 7:15. We'll need to be dressed and all these things, and we'll go over our visual schedule so my student knows what I expect from him. Same way with after school routines. My junior in high school, I know that after school you need some downtime, and I respect that. But by 4:30, I want you working on your homework. So we talk about expectations. We share that visual schedule so that he knows where to reference that. And we give grace to one another. We give grace to one another, guys. So if I come home from work at 5 o'clock and my kiddo has not started his homework by 4:30, let's just remember to remind him and redirect, okay? We're not throwing the whole idea out the window because it didn't happen one time. Give us some grace back and forth. I also want to talk about caregiver routine. I am a huge believer, and I have always done it. This will be the first year in the history of being a parent I haven't. I always take the first day of school off of work and I give myself a sensory day. I give myself a mental health day just to rest, make sure I get all these things back into place, but it's not always doable. As this year, it's not doable for me. So give yourself some grace, try to get back into your routine as a parent as well. Okay, right now I'm staying up late watching Cold Case Files, guys. Like we're talking 11:30, 12 at night, I'm still watching Cold Case. So I have to get back in the routine of shutting that down, shutting down my screen time and relaxing myself to get back in my frame of mind. I've got to get back in the routine of checking the homework box when I get home from school. So me as a parent or caregiver, I have to get back in that routine too. So because I'm struggling to get back in those routines, we need to realize that our students also might be struggling to get back into those routines. Organizing the supplies. Who has been to Walmart in the last 4 days? It is like barren wasteland in that school supply aisle, right? It's a lot, right? But labels are helpful. Letting your student know what the supply is and where it's going is helpful. For my daughter, sometimes we would put a note in there. This is fun looking notebook, but it's used for science. Create that quiet homework space and let your student know where it is. I love a homework box or a important paper box. So whether there's one on my counter, my kids know that if I need to see it, they put it in there. I also check their folders the next morning to make sure there's not any lingering papers in there I need to see. And prepare for emergency supports. So is there a fidget in your backpack? Do you know when you need a fidget? Does your teacher know you need a fidget? Here's some sensory items. Do you know how to ask for your sensory break if you need it? Make sure we're preparing for these things and make sure we're letting our kiddos know of any changes in routines. Because so when we start back to school, sometimes there's usually a holiday right away or a teacher's institute. So let them know that the routine may change a little bit. Let's talk about building a support network. So include your family, educators, and therapists, and peer monitors. Join a parent support group or Facebook communities if you prefer social media, and empower students to identify their safe adults. So it's very important that you talk about this with your students. This is Aunt Jerry. Aunt Jerry is your safe adult. You can talk to her if you have a problem. Aunt Jerry, you have vetted Aunt Jerry. You guys know that you have the same values and beliefs that you want imprinted on your child. So you identify that safe adult. And you also let the school know about that safe adult. We all have an emergency contact on our list for our kids at school, and we make sure that they know that the school knows this and that, and who the safe adult is for our student. So for our older kids, my favorite thing, transition. Review those course schedules. Do they align with what my student wants for their life after high school? Practice self-advocacy, okay? So when Mikey says, oh, man, I failed my test this week, ask him about his accommodations. Well, Mikey, did you remember to leave the room to go take your test in a quiet space? No, my teacher wouldn't let me. Okay, let's talk about this more. Why wouldn't she let you? Did you ask? No. Okay, maybe we need a system in place where you ask, whether that be an email or a post-it note. Like, you talk about these things to help them practice the self-advocacy skills they need without laying blame on anybody else, because we know as adults, we can't lay blame. We've got to work through what we need. Update those transition goals on the IEP and accommodations if needed. So for example, if Mikey's not leaving the room to take his classes, to take his tests, find out why. Talk to the team in a productive way and say, hey, I noticed he failed two classes. He says he's not leaving. Do we know why? Like, talk about it and put some supports in place that are helpful to your son or daughter. Red flags to watch for: frequent meltdowns or refusals. Some of this is typical, but if it keeps happening, we need to address it. Sleep or appetite changes. Again, some of these are typical, but make sure we're watching if it's a repeated problem. And a drop in performance or participation, okay? This is a big change for our kiddos going back to school, so make sure we're watching for these signs. Questions to ask your team, whether it be your IEP team or 504, are the accommodations being implemented? And can you give me an example of how? What the plan is if changes arise, and is a meeting needed to update any goals after the student's been at school for a hot minute? Great resources that we wanted to share with you. Of course, the Charting the LifeCourse tools, ISB for the Illinois State Board of Education, PACER, which is our National Center for Transition, understood.org, and extended school year services. There's a handout there for you as well. This is a QR code to our survey. We're asking that if you're watching this presentation after it was done live, or if you need to leave before the Q&A portion is over, to please do this QR code, follow the link, and take our presentations. Presentations are vital to our grant deliverables. We need to know we're doing a good job and that you're liking the content that we're presenting to you or not liking the content that we're presenting to you. So please take time and do your survey today. It is very important for our mission. At this time, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to stop the recording and take some questions.